Hello everyone, welcome to my 2020 holiday gift guide where I go through and pick out a bunch of stuff on Amazon to shamelessly put affiliate links down below to make some extra money off of my YouTube channel. If you're at all like me, I actually really like videos like this because I get to pick up some new tools and find some new stuff that I didn't know exists. So full disclosure, the links down below are Amazon affiliate links, so I do get a kickback from these purchases, but everything here in this video is stuff that I own and stuff that I've picked out. Nothing's sponsored in any way. These are just kind of my picks. So let's get started. So first off, let's talk about deburring tools. This is your standard deburring tool. I have a little block of aluminum, drilled a few holes, and you can see some of these holes are kind of sharp, and you kind of want to deburr that. You want to take that burr or that sharp edge off of it. So you would take something like this, you would kind of put it in the hole, round it around like that, takes off that edge, just has this nice little sharp carbide blade on it. This is kind of your entry-level basic tool. I ended up getting this nicer Noga set. Noga is the manufacturer. They make some really nice machine tools, and it comes with all of these different pieces. So you have a variety of these little blades that it comes with. You see like different profiles, and then you also have like a little pocket one that you can, put in your little shirt pocket. It also has this little cool thing, which is a far side countersink. So like, let's say I want to countersink the back of this, I can actually stick it through, and then the blade light comes out. I can countersink the back of it, press it, and then pull it back through the hole like that. It works a little bit nicer than that when you're not trying to do it on camera. Yeah, and then it also has this one what you can do like the end of dowels. And then my personal favorite is these two little guys that go on the end of this arm, and they just do the same thing, but they do a much nicer job. So just put that in the hole, go like that, and now you have a nice chamfered hole. So these are really nice if you're doing a lot of holes, you're doing a lot of deburring, and you just want something a little bit nicer than the standard one like this. And I do have a link down below for this one as well. These are very useful to have. This kit comes in a lot of different varieties. There's like a bronze, a gold, a platinum, maybe a diamond, I don't know. I think this is the silver kit. Just, look for what pieces are in the kit. I really do like these things. I use these all the time. This is another nice blade that is used to kind of take the edge off of something like that. So you can see it just kind of rounds that off. There's a lot of nice variants of that, so check below. A nice high-end deburring kit is definitely a must-have. And next up, we have the classic pair of 1, 2, 3 blocks. These are just kind of a shop standard, and it doesn't hurt to have multiple sets of these. I actually have several sets because as I'm fidgeting with this one right here, I see there's some gunk on this one that doesn't sit perfectly flat. They are relatively inexpensive, and they're just really handy to have. If you're not sure what a 1, 2, 3 block is, it is a 1-inch by 2-inch by 3-inch block of metal with alternating holes that are, some of them are threaded and some of them are through hole. You can use these in layout or setup. Like if I want to measure 6 inches, that's 6 inches, that's 5 inches, that's 4 inches, that's 2 inches. They're very useful for just basic stuff like that. If I want to space something exactly 1 inch up, there you go. They're also nice to space for clamping objects down to a milling table, router table, things like that. I also use these constantly for the Z offset on a cutter. So let's say you have your milling cutter like that. You would just kind of start it below, move it up until it just slightly slides under the 1, 2, 3 block, and now you know it's 1 inch up from the surface. And because they are threaded and have all these nice holes through them, they're great for clamping. I'll admit I even use these for weighting things down when I'm cutting them on the laser cutter. They just have a lot of uses, and they're relatively inexpensive. In my previous gift guide, I recommended a Hakko soldering iron, and this has kind of become my new favorite travel soldering iron. This is a case I purchased for it separately, but you can kind of get an idea just how tiny this thing is. And that's kind of the nice aspect of it is so small. This is the total soldering iron. It usually comes with a adapter and a couple different tips, and they just kind of insert in the end like that. The nice thing is these are the same Hakko tips that you can get for other soldering irons, so you can actually share the tips across your different irons. And this thing is battery operated, and some of them even come with an AC wall adapter. So we just kind of plug this into the back, and then you plug this into whatever battery you have or the AC adapter. This is really nice because you can use the batteries that you're running your combat robot or other RC stuff on. So we just plug this in, and then here you go. It has this really nice little OLED display. We hit a button, and these things heat up really quickly. And don't be fooled, this is a real actual soldering iron. This thing can do some serious work. So if you're working on stuff like out in the yard, in the car, or places where maybe you just don't have access to an outlet, or maybe you just kind of want to do a quick repair and you don't want to lug out the iron. Like I have a soldering station that is always on one of my workbenches, but something like this is extremely portable and you can use it just about anywhere. And these are actually really, really nice. I am very picky in particular about my soldering irons, but this thing is actually quite nice. You can even do custom settings, like I think it has an accelerometer, so you can have it to where if it's sitting for too long, it'll turn off, and then you can pick it up and turn it back on. Really, really nice. TS100 portable soldering iron. This is a 3D mouse, or more specifically, the 3D Connexion Space Navigator Wireless. A 3D mouse is a really cool way to move and manipulate objects on screen in a CAD program. Think SolidWorks, Fusion 360, things like that. If you or someone you know is just kind of getting into modeling and creating their own objects, it's really nice to get them started on something like this early because it really does help your workflow. I know a lot of people that have been using CAD for years and haven't used one of these, or like, oh, I would never do that. I like use my mouse and keyboard. That's great. You're awesome. Keep doing you. But once you start using one of these, you will wonder how you live without it. The way this mouse works is you have your normal mouse hand over here, and then you have this in your other hand, and this little top wobbly bit moves in pretty much every way. It slides this way, it can actually move on this plane flat, it can also move up and down, and basically all of those movements translate to your model in the software. So if you want to zoom it out, you pull it. If you want to zoom it in, you push it. If you want to slide it left to right, top to bottom, or spin it around, or do any number of combination of those things, it just translates to whatever you see on screen. It is really useful if you're trying to like flip something under, zoom into the inside of it. You can do that all very easily just by kind of doing that and then zooming in. And once you get the hang of this, it is just second nature to use. It also has a couple buttons that you can assign to hotkeys per program, and this is the wireless version, which just has a little USB charger in the back, a little on-off switch with a status LED, and it connects to your computer with the included dongle. I recently just got the wireless version of this, and I find absolutely no difference between the wired and the wireless. So if you want to spend the extra money and get the wireless, I highly recommend that. It kind of cleans up your workstation a little bit. The software is super nice. This thing is much better built than you might think. It weighs a little bit over a pound, it's very hefty, and it really stays down on your work surface when you're using it. Couldn't recommend this enough if you do a lot of work in CAD. Moving right along, have you ever gone to the hardware store and you see something like this and wish you had one at home? Well, I did, and now I do. This is a thread checker made by Hilman. They actually make a lot of the hardware that you see at Home Depot and stuff like that. And it is a nice piece of metal that has, you got imperial on one side, metric on the other, and I have it right on top of these organizers. Over here is where I keep all of my hardware. So I just gather up my bolts and screws, and I check them against this. This one is, let's see, this one's an M8, looks like. Yep, so that screws in, so that's an M8, and then you can line it up against that. That's a 30 millimeter long. This one, I think, is a 1/4 28. I generally know what these are. So that's a 1/4 28. That screws in nice and easy, so I know what that is. I can go organize that. And then this, I think, looks like a 1/4 20. Let's try that out. Yep, that's a 1/4 20 nut. So that's really how it's used. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but this thing is really well made. It has pretty much all the common sizes. My only gripe is it doesn't go down to a number 4, but you know what? If it's a 440, it's just gonna be smaller than this. I really wish it had an M3 over here, but I really don't do a lot with M3, M2s, or 440s. And it has these little feet on the bottom, so in theory, you could actually screw it down to your work surface. I never have, because sometimes I will actually grab this and bring it somewhere else, but I like the form factor of this. There are some that are kind of like nuts on a chain, and you kind of bring those out. I actually like having this on the work surface, and I can kind of visually just see, and it's just a little bit easier to use. So yeah, highly recommend this. It's a little bit spendy, but it is a nice quality piece, and I find it just absolutely indispensable in my shop. So lately I'm all about shop organization and just making things easier and always accessible. So I dedicated this top drawer over here to all of my batteries. So I've got my AA's, my AAA's, and other stuff in here. And then up on top, I have all my battery chargers for all my tools. So I've got all my Bosch chargers, and I've got my chargers for my video camera and all that equipment right here. And this usually sits kind of on the other side of me. I have this battery charger. Having just a simple battery charger that can do AA's, AAA's, NIMs, NiCads, lithium ions is really handy. This is a Nitecore i4, and it has 4 charging bays, and it has these nice little spring-loaded things inside of them that hold the battery. So you can put in a AAA into one of them. It's a little easier with 2 hands. You can put a AA, and you can hold all sorts of different batteries, and it can even do larger cells like an 18650, which are used in some of my flashlights. So you can put that in there as well. So you can hold all sorts of different batteries, and it has a little indicator as to whether they're charged or not. And it doesn't matter what kind of chemistry the batteries are, whether it be a NIM, a NiCad, or a lithium ion, it doesn't really care. It will detect which one is which, and it will go ahead and charge it. So my workflow is that I kind of have this sitting over there. I put batteries on it, or I just kind of stack batteries in front of it, and when they're done, I just toss them in here, and then I know everything is charged. Well, how do I know things are charged? Well, I have a little battery tester that sits inside here. These are really handy to have because not every device likes working well with rechargeable batteries. Some things really only work with the alkaline batteries, and having a little battery tester is nice and handy. So you just kind of put it in there, line it up, and then it'll tell you if it's good or bad. Not sure if that shows up on camera, but these things are super cheap, and it is just nice to have with all your battery organization. So let's talk about some smaller, more consumable items that would be really great for stocking stuffers if, we're actually doing stocking stuffers this year. Painter's tape, Carbide utility blades, and Sharpies. All of these are just kind of those consumable items that you use in pretty much every project. I use a lot of painter's tape. I use it for all my kind of layout, marking. I use it for pretty much any time I make a cut. I'm gonna lay it out with painter's tape first and then mark it on the actual painter's tape, because with aluminum and things like that, you don't always wanna mark directly on the thing. So I just use painter's tape. I also use it a lot on the laser cutter for masking things off, painting, all sorts of stuff. And it's nice to have various different sizes. Utility blades, obviously, I use those every time I cut something. Having a nice higher end carbide tip razor blade is just a world different. If you've ever had these standard ones, you'll cut like open a box, and it's really awesome that first cut, and then every other cut after that you're just kind of underwhelmed. The carbide ones are a real big difference. They last a lot longer, they're a lot sharper, so you can cut through harder things like plastics and things like that, and they are just tremendously sharper, and they hold their edge a lot longer. So definitely recommend getting a higher end brand of carbide tipped utility blades. And Sharpies. You can't have too many Sharpies inside a shop, and I found this nice little variety pack that has the different sizes. So you've got the big fat one for marking fat stuff, then you've got the standard tip, and then you have the nice fine point, which has a really difficult cap, fine point for all your fine things. And it's nice to have just a little bit of assortment. These things are really durable, they last a long time, and having the real actual Sharpie brand, there is quite a bit of a difference. So yeah, having the assortment on those, assortment on tape, and the carbide blade set, someone's gonna really love you if you get them all that. So yeah, I like these for stocking stuffers. Ball drivers. That's what these are. These are Bondhus ball drivers. I've got them in both a metric set and an imperial set, and these are fantastic. If you're doing a lot of stuff with socket head or Allen heads, These are just great. They fit in nicely. They give you that little bit of range of freedom. I actually bought these when I put together my Avid CNC, which has a ton of socket head screws, and these are just really nice. They have a great comfort grip. They just kind of feel nice, and the sets come in just a ton of sizes, just a fraction of the sizes that they come in. But I have both sets, and so you can get them all the way, you know, from the big boys all the way down to, where is that little tiny one? Yeah. Look at this. Look at that little thing. And this actually has the ball end on the end of it. Little tiny thing. So I really like the range of sizes. Now granted, if you want that mechanical advantage, you're going to want you know, a set like that as well. But having the backup of these just as a screwdriver, it's really nice, and it's a lot easier just to screw something in quickly with these. So I like to have both on hand, and these are fantastic. I really like this set. These next couple of products are kind of, let's call them non-traditional measuring tools that I don't think that maybe a lot of people have on hand, but they're actually very useful. We've got an angle gauge set, we've got a radius gauge set, and then a feeler gauge set. Some of you are probably familiar with the feeler gauge set, but the other two I don't see a lot of people using. So let's start with the angle gauge set. It is simply just a bunch of these little pieces of metal that have various angles. So let's say you're trying to, I don't know, design a holder for this. This is a lathe tool post, and you want to know what that inside angle is. Well, you just go in your little angle gauge set. I actually know what it is. Let's see, is that a 60? That is a 60. So you just take these little things and you can fit it inside there. And that is a 60-degree angle. Let me see if this is better on camera. So yeah, it just kind of slides in there. You've got, you know, an inside and outside and all sorts of different little configurations on this slippery little piece of metal. Jeez. So yeah, they're really handy for that. It's really good to just kind of check against angles and see if that is the right angle that you think it is. This is really useful for modeling so that you can get a piece that interfaces and mates very nicely with it. So in addition to that, for the angle gauge set, the radius gauge set is pretty much the same thing. This is nice and messed up. The cases on these aren't super good. So in this exact example, I have this piece which fits on there, this fits on there. This is for an upcoming video I'm working on. So I want to measure the little radius that's on the outside of this channel. I would go into my radius gauge set. This is a metric set. You can also get an imperial set. And I just look around for the one that I know that it is. So this is a 2. Yeah, it's got a little bit of wiggle on there. Let's try the 1.5. Yep, that is nice. That fits on there nice and perfect. So you've got kind of the inside and the outside. So this is really nice if you have a piece of existing thing that you're trying to model in your computer and you're trying to figure out what all these little radiuses and angles are. This is extremely useful if you're trying to model these motors because they have all of these weird angles and all these little radiuses. So like, you know, you have this little radius on the bottom, you can grab your little radius gauge and kind of figure out what that is so that you can get kind of a nice tight fit in between everything. So that is your radius gauge and your angle gauge. Now the feeler gauges are basically just these pieces of metal with various thicknesses. So let's say in this example I want to measure that little gap inside the top and the bottom of the motor. You would just take your little feeler gauges and you just kind of press them inside and see which one fits. That one's a little bit too big, so let's go smaller. Now we can just, oh, that one actually feels about right. So that is a 0.6 millimeter thickness in between the top and the bottom. So the feeler gauge is really nice because you can't get your calipers in there and it's just really difficult to determine otherwise. So yeah, these are extremely useful tools to have on hand if you're trying to recreate the geometry of something like this and bring it into CAD so that you can get nice and perfect fitting pieces. And lastly, 3D printer filament. If you or the person you're buying for has a 3D printer, getting kind of a new or different filament is always kind of fun because you can do interesting things with it. You know, black and white is obviously just kind of boring, so getting something a little bit different is always fun and welcome. So if you're choosing filament for someone, the biggest thing to be on the lookout for is the type of the filament and the size of the filament. The size is generally going to be 1.75 millimeter. The easiest way to do this is just to look at the filament that they already have existing. If it's 1.75, you are golden. If it's not 1.75, it's probably going to be like 2.85, I think is the other one. Just get whatever they already have. A 3D printer is not going to use two different sizes. It's going to use one or the other. So just see what they already have. In terms of the material, you're probably going to want to stick with PLA. It's the most common. It's the easiest to print. You could also look at PETG. PETG is another common one. Most printers are going to be able to print those two. If you start getting into ABS and some of the other exotics, there might be a chance that the printer might not be able to print it, or they're going to be really finicky and fiddly to print. So stick with PLA and just go with the size that they already have, that they know and love. So in the description, I have a few different varieties of filament. Metallic filaments are really cool. They have an interesting look. I really do like the white marble filament because it ends up kind of printing like marble. It has this really cool look, and the flecks in the filament actually hide the layer line, so you get this really clean look out of it. And then also I played around with rainbow filament, which is really interesting because it's not one color, it's just a variety. So this is like a metallic rainbow filament, and it looks really cool. So yeah, getting a filament like this is just a good excuse to print something worthless like this. I mean, it's just a fun little trinket, but you wouldn't do this just out of plain white. It's just kind of boring. So yeah, filament is always useful if you have a 3D printer. So this is my selection for my 2020 holiday gift guide. If you want even more products, go ahead and check out the gift guide, I think from 2018. I didn't do one last year, but it actually has a lot of good stuff on there. When I was picking for this year, I ended up double picking a lot of things that I already covered. So you might want to go check out that one. It has a lot of good stuff as well. As always, thanks for watching. Hopefully there's some interesting stuff in here for you. And of course, it helps me support my channel and all the things I do. So thanks for watching. Check out my Facebook page for any updates to my channel, and see you in the next video.